We are back. So today we are going to be starting off with the defensive side of the ball where we've covered all the positions on offense. We're going to start on defense with the defensive line. Two positions on the defensive line and with two very different levels of talent and stability. We're going to start with defensive end. We all know what's going on with the defensive end. Myles Garrett, he is a beast. He's coming off of a franchise-setting year. He set a franchise record for both sacks in a game last year with 4.5 against the Bears. I think the Browns had 9 total sacks that game. Sorry, Justin Fields. I love you, but yikes, that was a rough game. And sacks in the season total with 16. Again, both of those franchise records. It was a franchise-breaking year for Myles Garrett. He was amazing. He was a beast, and there's no reason to believe that he won't be again this year. If this defense, and more specifically the defensive line as a unit, is going to be elite, Myles Garrett is going to have to be a driving force behind that. And again, no reason to believe that he won't be. If making the lives of NFL offenses was a crime, then his partner in crime would be Jadeveon Clowney. It was a little bit unsure whether he would sign back with Cleveland. He signed a 1-year deal last year, and he did get it done. I believe it's around $11 million for another 1-year deal. I think Jadeveon Clowney had some quotes about he would go where whoever would pay him the most money, and I guess Cleveland kind of was in the end. He did pretty good with Myles Garrett last year. I think pretty good might be an understatement, actually. He did pretty great. He had 9 sacks, which isn't necessarily world-breaking, but I think when you consider the impact that he had on the run game, there was a lot of plays that he broke up. There were a lot of times where he was super close to getting to the quarterback, and the quarterback would get it off in a bad way. You can tell he impacted the pass or something like that. You can tell that Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett gives the defense something to think about on both sides of the line, which is huge. You can't just load up one side of your offensive line or double team one guy and be fine. Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett is a duo that could wreck the league again, and I think that's why the Browns are making such a big push for this year, because who knows if Jadeveon Clowney is back after this year again, as was the case last year. And that's kind of what the defensive end position looks like as far as the starters. We're going to move on now to Chase Winovich. He was acquired from the Patriots in a trade for inside linebacker Mack Wilson. He is kind of a guy who's replacing Takk McKinley's role on the roster, where he is an established talent. He's not, just a bum that they're bringing in for training camp. He's going to be a serviceable fill-in when Clowney and Garrett, and it's usually either one or the other. They usually don't take them both out. But if Clowney and Garrett are out, then Chase Winovich is a serviceable guy to throw in there that you can't completely ignore when he's on the field. Again, it did cost them Mack Wilson, but with the way Mack Wilson's career was projecting, maybe he'll blossom in New England in ways that he didn't with Cleveland. He was all right. He was another guy who would look really good in training camp, and then in the regular season wouldn't look as good. And I think that was the case with Chase Winovich in New England too. So they just kind of traded good ideas at different positions for each other. But Chase Winovich is very serviceable as a backup to Clowney and Garrett. If one of them goes out and needs a breather, he can go in, hopefully wreak some havoc, and hopefully he turns a lot of eyes his way this year. Then we're going to go to the rookie Alex Wright, the 3rd-round pick out of UAB. He looks to be a really good project if he's playing sheltered snaps. He doesn't look like he's going to be thrown into anything he's not ready for, especially with who's ahead of him. Again, barring injury, he looks like somebody who will be able to develop and grow, sheltered by the 3 people above him on the defensive end. He probably does see some snaps. They do want to see what he has, and I think this preseason is going to be pretty big for Alex Wright. Because if he looks good in preseason, then maybe he jumps Chase Winovich on this depth chart. And if not, he can continue to grow, continue to develop. Andrew Berry's regime does seem to be pretty willing to be patient on some guys. If they're not dynamo playmakers immediately, they seem to be willing to, kind of wait around for a year or two until they really pop out and blossom if they view somebody as a project that they can work on. And they obviously view him as pretty highly rated. He was their 2nd pick in their 3rd round. They definitely want to invest some time and some resources into his development. So if he can turn into something great, that would be awesome, especially for a 3rd-round pick. Also, with the Browns for training camp, we have Isaac Rochell and Stephen Weatherly. They're just some veteran backup guys. They're probably not going to be cracking the starting lineup anytime soon, but they're good to have around if a freak injury accidents happen where you're down like 2 or 3 guys, they're veterans, they've been in the league for a while, they know what's up. It's always good to have those kind of guys around, especially at a position as crucial as defensive end. You have Curtis Weaver. I've heard this guy's name in like message boards and on social media for a while now about just wait for this guy to burst out of the bubble and really pop onto the scene. It hasn't happened yet, and especially again considering the depth chart ahead of him, where you have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney there, and now with Chase Winovich and this rookie Alex Wright. Who knows if he gets to bust out of the scene in Cleveland? If I guess he's a project that they can hang around on, but if he doesn't end up becoming that star player that I've heard he could be, I guess it wouldn't be the biggest deal in the world. It would just be kind of disappointing how I hear so much hype about this guy every year, and it doesn't really seem to pass. And then lastly, at defensive end, we have Isaiah Thomas. He was a 7th-round pick out of Oklahoma, another Sooner that the Browns took in this draft. They're taking a flyer on a guy in the 7th round. We'll see if it pays off. Hopefully he's great and that they don't have to cut him or anything, but it's kind of a long shot for him at this point in the year. We're going to move on to the defensive tackle position. This is seen as one of the weakest positions on the Browns roster, and you'll see why in a minute. We're going to start with Sheldon Day. He is currently on the active non-football injury list. He's a veteran option. He is kind of seen as like a safe starting option, where if he's one of the starters coming out of camp and into week 1, then you'll know that none of the guys that they kind of took a flyer on or are hoping to blossom into it maybe as a little young, none of that really happened, and Sheldon Day is just kind of there. There we got Taven Bryan. He was acquired in free agency from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He signed with Cleveland. He is a candidate for the starting job, but again, not the clear number 1. So if he is one of the starting D tackles, then we'll know that kind of Perrion Winfrey, who we'll get to in a minute. Perrion Winfrey didn't really burst onto the scene, and that is kind of like somebody has to start, and he's one of those guys. We're going to move on now to Perrion Winfrey, who I just mentioned. He was a 4th-round pick from Oklahoma. He is viewed as a steal from the fan base and from some of the draft people at large. So they are having pretty high expectations for him, especially for being a 4th-round pick, viewed as someone who could steal the starting opportunity from this kind of weaker position on the roster right out of the gate. He could earn the starting job in training camp, in preseason games. He's somebody who the Browns are really looking to. They're looking for him to impress early, and if he can be that guy, then that would be amazing. Well, we've seen Andrew Berry get some steals later in the draft before. Thinking about Donovan Peoples-Jones, Demetric Felton looks like he could be a good utility knife guy on the offense. Maybe Perrion Winfrey. We'll see in like 2 or 3 years as another great value pick that Andrew Berry got in the later rounds, which he's going to have a good number of those because they don't have any first-round draft picks in the next few years coming up. And then we have guys like Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai. Tommy Togiai, former OSU Buckeye, shout out. They're experienced backups, not quite, they're not like 6-7 year veterans or anything, but they've been around the block for a few years now. They kind of know the drill. Maybe they stick around on the roster, maybe they don't, especially with some of the new blood coming in, maybe passing them up. Perrion Winfrey is definitely threatening their roster spots. Again, I do have a soft spot for Tommy Togiai for what he did with the Buckeyes, but if they're not key contributors to the defensive line, then it wouldn't break my heart necessarily. You have undrafted free agent rookies Glenn Logan and Roderick Perry. I doubt they, make it past training camp. But again, with the defensive tackle being such a weak spot on the roster, if they can show some promise, if they can, turn some heads in the coaching staff, then they may very well find a spot on the final 53-man roster. This is a position that currently doesn't have a clear starter, doesn't have a clear number 1. And if some things don't go their way, they might not have one come week 1. Again, it might just be Taven Bryan and Sheldon Day are really the best options on paper that we have. But again, they're not. If those are the 2 starting defensive tackles, then it might just be because nothing exciting really happened at that position, and they're just going to have to kind of roll the dice with that position being kind of man like it was last year and ever since they really let Sheldon Richardson go. Although the Browns have been rumored to be in a couple guys like, again, Sheldon Richardson. Again, there's been reports that they might have a reunion, and guys like Ndamukong Suh they might be pursuing, but those signings haven't happened yet. If they do, then this is a completely different room, a completely different group, maybe somebody with a clear starter. But as of right now, it's just kind of a toss-up between guys like Sheldon Day, Taven Bryan. We'll see what Perry and Winfrey has, and the rest is just kind of a mix. This is one of those, again, flinging spaghetti at a wall kind of positions because nobody's really proven themselves at the NFL level quite yet. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you liked it and you would like to see more, please feel free to like and subscribe. Please leave a comment below about what you think about the defensive line position at the Browns. If you wouldn't mind checking out some more positional previews that I've already done, if you haven't already, I would implore you to do that, please. And just thank you all again for watching the video. I will see you at the next one.